Alrighty, so you want to know what gear to put on the new collab characters, and I completely sympathize with that because I wasn't really sure what to put on the characters to begin with. It's kind of this weird gray area where two of them are like big time damage dealers, and one of them is more or less like a big support. The other one is a PvE character. So let's start from the very beginning. Rudeus was the one that I was going to have the most trouble figuring out what set I was going to make for him specifically. I originally intended to make him an attack crit damage set because he is a damage dealer for the human team. If you do not know how he works, basically he has these orbs, these magic orbs that he sort of gets put on himself. They're like gray buffs, and then once you reach 5 orbs, he actually gains a big crit chance and damage dealt boost, and for each orb on himself, he's going to increase his single target damage by 20%, which is very, very big. It makes him hit really, really hard. So I originally wanted him to just do as much damage as possible. I don't necessarily think that that's the best way to go about it at this point, because I figure a lot of people are going to be using this character for PvP applications. If you do not plan on using him for PvP, I highly recommend you go attack crit damage, but if I've learned anything from the past, whenever Echidna came out from the ReZero collaboration, I really figured I was going to use her for like the farming team, and she was going to be more of a PvE character for me, but she has been incredibly like long-lived in PvP, surprisingly, for the Unknown team. And at the end of the day, I would have been much better off making an HP defense set for her, because if you're unaware, higher tier PvP at the very least is mainly just a battle on who goes first. So that means having the most CC, which is basically meaning that you're going to have to end up putting an HP defense set on, because HP scales the most CC. So if you're planning on using the character for PvP, which I definitely do, and I don't really see him being super great. Like I think he'll be good, don't get me wrong, but I don't see myself using him over some of the other damage dealers that I already have for most of my PvE teams. I don't really think that it's going to be worth building 2 sets for him specifically, because I only will ever have probably one Rudeus Greyrat, so making 2 sets and just having another character hold on to his other set, which I barely will ever get use out of, I think is just better to make 1 set for him, and I'm planning on making an HP defense set. This is the only set that I actually don't have already prepped and ready to go, because I thought I was going to use more attack crit sets, so I have those ready, but I'll work on this throughout the duration of the collab, and then we'll have that ready to go at some point in the near future. Next character is Eris Greyrat, who is a very interesting character. She unfortunately got a little bit shafted because she is a PvE-only character, so you can see her passive does not work in PvP, and unfortunately they restrict it even further by making her not work in Demonic Beast Battle. I don't think this is anything new. If you played during the Shield Hero collaboration, they made it to where Kizuna basically fits the exact same criteria. I assume they don't want exclusive collab characters that aren't easily obtainable to be like super meta units when it comes to the really hard game mode, because then it would be pretty unfair, I guess, for newer players who get into the game who don't have access to these characters. That's the only thing that I can think of, but this is a purely PvE character. Because you're not even using her in Demonic Beast Battle, the odds of you actually needing high CC on her is probably very minimal. If you're aware, her Holy Relic, which I don't have currently at the time of recording this, does require her to have Rudeus on the team to get the most use out of the character, because she's basically like a Rudeus buff unit. But because she is just base PvP, or PvE, sorry, and you don't really need a whole lot of CC on her, I opted for just a regular attack defense set. I typically don't even use defense set on attack pieces anymore. More often than not, it's an attack crit set, which I think is completely fair, but because, like I said, you're already going to be doing pretty good damage with the character, I'm not really looking for insane numbers, I'm just looking for stability with this kind of unit. I opted for the defense pieces instead. Obviously, you can go attack crit if you want to, but I think this is probably the only character I feel completely safe with making an attack set for, because obviously there's no reason for me to go for high CC. So that's what I went for her. Attack defense went pretty standard. I don't even really think you even need to give her UR gear, but it helps out with box CC and stuff like that, and if you want to use the character at maybe their fullest potential, having UR gear is very nice. Next up, we have Roxy. I think she's probably one of the easier ones. She is, if you're unaware, a pretty standard sort of unknown support unit. So she has a deplete ultimate move gauge skill. She does have an AoE pierce card, which could potentially do decent damage, but from the stuff that I watched before the collab came out on Global, the JP players didn't really seem like they were doing too much damage with this, so I figured it was more or less going to be just like kind of just a damage dealing card that she has as a support character. If you don't know, her passive basically puts on like a shield at the beginning of every one of your allies' turns, and if the shield doesn't get broken, it increases attack related stats, which is pretty nice. So just having her as a support unit on the field, making sure that you can get as much out of her passive as possible, I think it's kind of a no-brainer to just go HP defense with this character. Not really any reason to try to go attack unless you just for some reason really want to go for making sure that the Pierce card hits hard, or potentially the ult. The ultimate is very interesting. It does scale tremendously, actually. So it lowers all stats except for basic stats, so the HP defense and attack stat, but it basically lowers every substat on the character it starts at 30% at 1/6, and then at 6/6 I think it's 160%, which is an incredibly high percentage. That's basically going to lower all substats to almost 0 on most characters, but there are a lot of characters in the meta right now that can't be, or I say a lot, but if you have a Mael team that has full goddesses, they can't be stat lowered, and if you're running Escanor, he also can't be stat lowered. So this ultimate isn't necessarily going to help too much in that regard, but if you're going up against like demons or something like that, this could potentially do quite a bit of damage, and then also just, you know, stunt their sort of like damage on their team because they're not going to have a whole lot of basic substats. So I think HP defense for her is completely understandable. I think it's very, you know, cut and dry, no no nonsense kind of thing there. She's just very supporty, not really any reason to go for anything else in my, you know, personal opinion. Last up, we have Ghislaine, who I think is the one that a lot of people are super interested in because she hits very hard, but at the same time, she's actually really tanky for whatever reason. She just has really good stats, I think, so you can see them right there. She does do a really good amount of damage, and so I originally intended to maybe make an attack crit damage set for her, but like I said earlier, because I ended up kind of getting pigeonholed into a like really bad situation with the Echidna, and I ended up needing an HP defense set for her eventually, which I just unengraved the attack crit set that I had for my Echidna and just swapped it over to a HP defense set recently, which has been so much better. I just went ahead and opted for an HP defense set as well. If you're going to use the character in ungeared or in geared PvP, I think that having the most CC possible is probably going to be the best bet, because if you can go first with the unknown team, you should be in a really good position to either lock down your opponent or just get really good damage on the board really early. So just going for CC, I think, is probably the best case scenario here. If you're unaware, her passive is PvP only, so I think it's very important to note that I don't know if there's a real good reason to make an attack crit set unless you just already have insanely good CC. Maybe you're a big whale, you have 15 million box CC or whatever the case may be. At that point, you can probably out CC without having HP defense on her. But for a majority of the player base, I would say going for CC and making sure that you can try to go first if possible, and it'll make her a little bit tankier in geared PvP, could help you at the end of the day, because realistically, her passive and her Holy Relic just make it to where you deal a lot more damage. In general, it's just a damage dealt increase. It's not necessarily like an attack stat increase. You can see that she does mark a target, kind of like Galen's Coerce does, but it always lands on the character with the highest CC on the enemy team. And if they can be stat lowered, they actually take a 30% attack-related stat cut. But a lot of the times that's going to end up being, you know, Mael or whoever has the most CC, like Escanor or somebody, which can't be stat lowered, unfortunately. So I think the way that they've done these unknown characters is kind of sort of trying to nerf or combat the demon team in a way. So I think that's kind of fair, because the demon team is really good at the moment. But she does just gain 40% extra damage dealt to the marked target, and her Holy Relic just makes it to where every time you use a single target skill, which she has 2 of, you gain 20% extra damage dealt, a limit of 3 times. So that's a 60% damage increase on top of the 40% damage increase from hitting the marked target. So that's a lot. I don't think that you'll really need to go too much more damage than that. So realistically, I think HP Defense is a fine set to make. So let me know what your thoughts and opinions are. If you're planning on making a different set for any of these characters, definitely let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to see, maybe your reasoning for it, or, maybe you don't think that I'm making the right sets for my character. Let me know why. So either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this helped out. If it did, feel free to subscribe. We will have more, content on the collab and all of the units coming up very soon. So yeah, I will see you guys later.